All right, welcome back. The table looks a little bit differently than it normally does. This is probably going to be, I think, episode 15 of the CB750 Build project. I think on this one, I'm going to honestly make it as simple as I can. I'm going to basically go do a quick overview of the cylinders and what I have learned about the cylinders, as well as the pistons, which are all up there. And see where we're at and see what the parts and pieces and bits and bobs are going to cost me. So, first things first. So when I took these pistons out of this engine, on the inside, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up on camera, but yeah, right here, it says Haynes ST900cc. So what that tells me is these are from a company called Henry Abe, was the name of the company. It doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, or it doesn't sell pistons anymore. So the problem is this piston is broken. It's got a little piece chipped out right there that is where one of the piston rings would actually sit. So that's not going to work. I did go on to eBay and I found this exact piston kit, and it isn't just a piston kit. Again, because these are 67mm pistons, it's actually a whole thing. So part of that is this. So in here, you can kind of see them sticking out the bottom. These are the cylinders, all right? And these are not stock cylinders. So the way that this particular big bore kit works for these is you basically, when they had this originally, they took it into a place, they heated it up, and then they pressed out the old sleeves. These are sleeves. They pressed those out, then they had new ones that came with the kit, and they pressed those in. Well, let me go back a step. So they pressed out the old ones. After you press them out, you have to then bore the cylinders, or I'm sorry, bore the face, bore it out to a bigger diameter, then press in the new cylinders, and then bore those out so that they match up with the pistons. So it's a whole thing. Now, I have found that kit again. There's only one of them right now, so maybe it'll still be around, maybe not. But basically, that kit comes with everything. So it has all new pistons, which would solve that problem. Has all new piston rings. It has 4 new cylinders as well. That kit costs about $900, so 890 something and change. I'm not going to link it because I want it and I don't want to show it to you. But yeah, it's there. So that's what this thing has in it currently. However, there's another company, CycleX. I've mentioned them before, and those guys do a kit as well. But their kit comes with the new sleeves. It comes with new pistons that are actually, I think, even better than these. So these are actually like 70s correct, time period correct, I guess you could call them, pistons. But the ones from CycleX are domed pistons. So they are a little bit racier, they're a little bit nicer, they're billet as well, so they're lighter, I think, than these are, so on and so forth. So that's kind of what this was to begin with, was that kit. Now, I think that these cylinders are probably fine, to be honest. I do think there was, let's see, number two. Number 2 has, I don't know how well it'll show up, it probably won't at all, but number 2 has a little bit of wear in there on this back side. It's not horrible. It's very, very slight, but it is there. I haven't decided yet how severe that is, or if I need new cylinders or not. But again, when I can buy that whole kit, I can't find the individual pistons anymore. And a lot of the other places that do sell pistons sell them for a ridiculous amount, and then you have to go and bore and everything. So either way, it ends up being the same if I go with brand new parts or functionally new old stock for the for the piston stuff. So what I think I'm gonna do is think on it, to be honest. So what I'm gonna do real quick though is go over this guy. So that piston that I already showed you that has all the, like has that little chip out of it and some other stuff, he's the exact same one that I showed you in that other episode that's got this little guy. So this wrist pin, yes, I now remember the friggin' term. I was saying it all wrong last time, but these wrist pins, they have, this one specifically has overheated or expanded or something, and it was basically seized inside of this piston. So I did knock it loose, but it's all kinds of screwy and bad and messed up and chewed up. So that thing's no good. In addition to that, so this is the rest of that piston, or I'm sorry, this is the connecting rod that was attached to that piston. And that's the little dude that was one of the two that spun bearings. So these bearings are all chewed up on the inside. But the actual pistons, or I'm sorry, the connecting rods themselves are not too bad. I've cleaned them up a little bit and kind of gotten in there, and they're actually not too bad on the insides of the actual connecting rods, which is promising in a lot of ways. So I would love to not have to replace these if I can help it, but I need to check tolerances on them to see if they're still good. In addition to that, because that wrist pin was basically just stuck up in here, you can kind of even still see, like, it still has edges and stuckness to it. I really am not, I'm not going to push that through again. But I'm curious if I can go through and clean this thing up to the point where I can actually still use it. My guess is yes, because the clearances or the tolerances I think on the wrist pins are not as bad as they are for down here on the connecting rod. I don't think. That's a problem for future me, and he will probably be angry at me for doing that. But other than that though, looking at the actual connecting rods, none of them are bent, it looks like. So I've kind of placed them and tried to wiggle them back and forth on some pretty flat surfaces, and they actually look like they're okay, and they didn't bend, which is great news. But even if they had, I have found replacement, basically new old stock ones of these that are not that expensive on eBay, so I have the option to use those. I don't really think I need to upgrade to something crazy because honestly I'm not using this thing for racing. Somebody did once and beat it all to hell, but I'm not going to do that. So I think I'm going to keep these. I'm going to keep those pistons, or I'm sorry, not the pistons. I'm going to keep the connecting rods, and I'm going to try and keep the cylinders because I think those are fine, and I don't need to get new ones. But if I replace stuff, I will just probably go with the full replacement kit, i.e. cylinders, pistons, the works. Because then I'm sure that it's built and done correctly. Plus it'll have nice new parts in there, and nice new parts are always nice. So what I'm gonna do right now that I've talked way too much, is I'm gonna go through and I'm just gonna speed through cleaning the faces of these just because I'm curious. I can't really see through all the carbon, so I wanna get some of that carbon off and see what the faces on these pistons actually look like to figure out how bashed up they got. So I'm gonna go ahead and time lapse that right now. Okay, so we're back after some polishing. Not really polishing, but yeah, we're back. And now I'm a little bit more confused than I was. So I kind of cleaned up the heads of these pistons a little bit. Didn't want to really do anything too crazy to them. Not that I'm planning on using them again, but this was more just to get an idea of what might have been caked underneath all that grime. So what you can kind of see is what looked like impacts almost. So on these, when I looked up these pistons, they have this where it's like the little U shape or like W shape down here, and then the single on this side. But you can see that there's a little ridge in there. So something hit this, and it hit it a bunch at some point. That is not correct, or at least not based off of any of the ones that I have seen. So that one has impact. That one has impact, it looks like, in the same spot. So nothing on the exhaust side, but it looks like the intake side does have some pretty nasty impacts, and it's on every single piston. Now, the one that got the crap kicked out of it is this guy. This is number 4 out of that engine. So, not sure how well, let me see how close I can get to this thing. So, you can kind of see, so like there's multiple impacts up here that have like dug gouges in there. In addition to that, you have chunk here, chunk here, chunk here, all these little impact divots all around the outer edges, which that one seems really strange to me, like there was something in the engine broken that was just whacking into it repeatedly, and I'm not really sure what it might have been. But yeah, so that's what that one looks like. So that's these. The cylinders themselves, like I said earlier, don't look too bad, but these pistons tell me a different story. Next thing I think I'm going to do... Oh, actually, before I get into that, so the thing that I can't figure out. Originally, I thought it was spun bearings. But maybe I don't know what the meaning of a spun bearing is. Because all these bearings were seated the way that they are supposed to be inside of the connecting rods. So they were seated properly, which means they didn't move, but they were grinding away at the crankshaft, which is why now I need a new crankshaft. So I'm not really sure what the deal is, if they just weren't getting lubrication and they seized up because of that, or what the deal is. But that's the quick gist of it. So it's not so much that they spun necessarily as they are just eating pieces of metal. So that's that. Overall, yeah, that's kind of what I expected from all these little heads. Or I'm sorry, all these pistons. And they're probably going to all get swapped out / replaced anyway. But again, the connecting rods look okay. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with them. I will need to check the tolerances, which I'm going to do probably off camera, but I don't think that there's actually anything wrong with them. I think they're probably okay. But yeah, that's where we're at from here. So I'm also now going to go and take a look at the valve train, and I'll be back once I got this out of here and that up here. So be right back. Okay, welcome back. And now we have this guy up here. So this is your valve train for the CB750. I've got the little dowel pins are still in there, so I'm going to be careful with it on the backside. But yeah, so here's all your springs and whatnot. I'm a little curious what all, if all, anything has been done to this. So I've got a valve spring compressor tool around here someplace that I'm going to yank out. But before I do, just wanted to point this out. So a little bit ago, we looked up at the bottom of the, or I'm sorry, at the top end of the number 4 piston, and it had a bunch of impacts on it. So, so does this, as it turns out. So this right here is that same one. Can I zoom in on this? I bet I can. Let me try that. Hadouken. Okay, so, yeah. You can kind of see these. A bunch of just little impacts around. So something at some point in time was sitting in the number 4 cylinder just getting whacked around all over the place, causing a bunch of damage. So I don't know what it was, but yeah, that's gonna be fun. So, So, in order to speed through this, I'm probably just going to throw this guy in a vise, I think. Because the valve spring compressor tool that I have is for something bigger. So, we'll see if it works. I gotta jerry-rig some stuff. So, we'll be back once I do that. Okay, so not the approved solution, but like I said, I've got a giant one of these. So right now I've just got it trapped up here on the top, and then I've got basically a rubber stopper here on the bottom, and I'm just gonna try and finagle it out of here. You're not gonna get a great view, but I gotta get it done, so it is what it is. This is not the proper way to do this, but it is working. So that's something. One. There's two. I'm gonna slowly let off of that. And there you go. That little guy. Those two little guys. And then... Alright. And there you go. The valve comes out le bottom. Out through there. So... That's interesting. I'm going to pause real quick before I go farther than this, because seeing this has made me think of something. I'm not actually sure what the original ones of these looked like, and I'm going to go look it up real quick just to see if visually there are any differences between this and what I expected to see. So, be right back. Alright, back from that little break. So, fortunately, the answer is no. / not different than I expected. So, these valves look to be the stock valves for this, which puts it at, I want to say it's 32 millimeters. Yeah, 32 millimeters is the stock setting, or the stock valve size for the intake valves on this bike. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing fast forwarding as I get the rest of these valves out and over here on my little mat. So double time. Alright, so they're all out now. Let's go back to, yeah, already out, whatever. So, they're all out. That tool is helpful, but also quite huge. So, there you go. All of the valves are out. I don't think I'm actually going to pop out the guides if I don't have to. And honestly, looking at everything, I am not convinced I'm going to have to. All those look fine. All these look fine. I need to measure again just to make sure that all of the sizes are what I expect them to be. Actually, do I have... Where are my calipers? So, let's see here. I think these are the intake ones, which are, looks to be right about 32. And the exhaust ones, which are way more trashed, they look to be, looks like 28. So yeah, these are stock valves for this bike. So now I know that. Honestly, so what I think I'm going to actually do, just to test and make sure that none of these are bent. They don't look bent. None of them look visibly damaged in any way, shape, or form. But there we go. Just to be sure, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a getaway. I'm going to hook them up to my drill, or my drill press, rather. And then I've got one of these little guys, and I'm just going to measure and make sure that they are all about as true as I expect them to be. My guess is they're fine, though, looking at them. And that's not my issue. But we'll find out here in a minute. So I'm not going to bore you showing you how that works, but we'll be back once I actually check and get all these confirmed to be straight. So be right back. And we're back. And yeah, as expected, they are all straight and true, exactly what I would expect them to be. So yeah, none of these are bent as far as I can tell using the micrometer. And yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean these up and I'm going to get out of here. At some point, I'm going to have to figure out what I'm actually going to do with these, whether it's put them away, replace them with new ones. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to keep them. But yeah. And for right now, they're just going to stay out until I get the engine or the cases all cleaned up and ready to go. But that's it for this. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.